Hello, wherever you are joining us from today, we want to say a huge welcome to our global community. We hope you're enjoying the Customer Marketing Summit. I also want to send out an extra special thank you to all our sponsors, partners, speakers, and participants who together have made this event possible. Their sessions are bursting with insights to help you level up. But remember, the learning doesn't stop here. If you haven't already, you can upgrade your pass to include access to all today's sessions on demand. Or you can become a PMA member and benefit from unlimited access to exclusive templates, frameworks, and our entire library of talks from our live events. And remember, have your questions at the ready. Simply post your question in the comments section and get awesome advice from an expert in the field. What's not to love about that? So now, on to the next talk.
All right, fantastic. Hey, everyone. This is Andrew Sevilla, and today we're going to be kicking off a panel for the Customer Marketing Summit. Our panel today is going to be discussing, covering off on the role and remit of customer marketing. We've got some amazing panelists, and we're super excited to share our stories with you and our insight and our advice and things to think about. So why don't we kick things off with intros. So I'm Andrew Sevilla, and I'm the Director of Customer Marketing for a company called Sage Intacct. Lauren?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Lawson, and I am a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Doctor.com, recently acquired by Press Ganey.
And I'm Caitlin Hess, Director of Customer Marketing at Phenom.
Hey everyone, I'm Charlotte Lilly, Head of Global Customer Marketing at Coupa Software.
Hey all, I'm Matt Fitter. I'm a Senior Program Manager for Customer Marketing for IBM's Artificial Intelligence portfolio.
Wow, we've got a pretty diverse set of folks on our panel today, representing a pretty wide range of companies. So that's good to hear. Why don't we kick things off with, if everyone wouldn't mind answering a question a bit about yourself. So how did you get involved in customer marketing? What was the starting point for you? Lauren, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Well, I actually came up from client success and started getting involved with the product marketing team. Product and customer marketing are within the same department at Doctor.com. So started getting involved with them to help create resources, and then a spot opened up on the team and I was able to move over. And it's just been great ever since. It's been such a fun ride, and I've loved getting to know the product and customer marketing world and find myself in this great career.
Very nice, very nice. How about you, Caitlin?
So I was managing sort of all of marketing at my last company, and we had a big gap when it came to customer marketing that I sort of started to fill in, and I really enjoyed it. And so when I applied at Phenom, I actually applied for a different job that ultimately the recruiter and I were like, yeah, this is not the right fit. But she had me talk to the VP, who's now my direct supervisor. And he said, well, tell me what you're doing and what you like doing. And he said, you get really excited when you talk about the customer marketing stuff you're doing. And I said, well, yeah, that's my favorite part of my job. And so he said, well, we don't have a role right now, but we might in the future. And then 2 weeks later, they had a customer marketing role. So it was sort of a destiny that brought me to customer marketing.
It's funny how things work out like that sometimes, huh? All right, and Charlotte, you and I go back a ways, but fill us in. What's your background?
Well, I can't really claim destiny. That's pretty amazing, Caitlin. But I was in sales, and as we were growing, I was at a company called Box, and people kept coming to the sales team saying, we need a customer, to talk to another customer. Does anyone have a customer to talk to press? And I would always be like, my customer, I want them to talk to, do whatever, because I knew it would help me in my relationship with them. And so eventually they were like, hey, do you want to come over and run customer programs, is what we were calling it. And at the time I was like, what's that? Like, I had no idea what this was. This was like over 10 years ago. And it's like, I just decided, sure, why not? I'll make a transition from sales into marketing. I still didn't want to leave the company, but still wanted to learn something new. And similarly to you all, now I've been in this field for over 10 years. So I'm loving it so far.
Fantastic. Yeah, I know you go back a long ways, Charlotte, and you've got a ton of great experience, and can't wait to hear more about you and your experience. So, Matt, why don't you tell us a bit about you?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you'll hear through our panel today that there's really no direct path to customer marketing. Not to give a fourth different story, but I've had a variety of experiences at IBM through product marketing, through content marketing, and then through sales enablement. So I kind of take each experience with me to the customer marketing realm. And it's really ultimately about defining the success that we have with customers, because at the end of the day, we're selling to individuals. So it's really important to get those stories across and have that trickle down to sales, to win new business, to marketing, to develop more customer stories, and to, as Charlotte mentioned, to PR and comms as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I've got a similar background as most of you. I wasn't in customer marketing, 15 years ago. I was actually in kind of community and supporting PR, and then the role way back when didn't really exist, and so it was interesting to be able to kind of be a part of the early stages of defining the customer marketing, customer advocacy role. And it's super fun. I have to say, it's probably the most fun role that I've had in any professional situation. So looking forward to hearing more about you and how you've all been able to kind of navigate your careers and the things that you do and what you find important. So why don't we kick things off with a question around how do you define customer marketing in your company? And I think this is one of the things we talked about on our prep call was, if you ask 15 different people, they might give you 15 different definitions for what customer marketing is. So why don't we try to understand some of the nuances and think about how you think about customer marketing in your role and within your company. Charlotte, do you want to take this one? Do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it. So how do we define customer marketing at our company? You're so right, Andrew, that it's really difficult to define. And even the role itself, right? People are like, you say you're in customer marketing, they say, oh, customer success. I was like, no, but here's what it's like. And so usually what I say is in one sentence, it's we help tell stories through our customers, or we help tell our company story through our customers. And that just, it's so hard to sum up everything. But when I have to lay it out strategically for like our CMO or someone, I always say customer marketing has 3 pillars. There's an advocacy pillar, there's an executive pillar, and then there's this kind of life cycle or install-based pillar. And so on the advocacy side, it's your reference program, it's getting customers involved in all the different opportunities, it's case studies and stories and all of that good stuff. For us, the executive pillar is all about executive communications, executive relationships, and executive programs. And then on the lifecycle side, it's also how do you market to customers? And what I like about lifecycle being kind of like paired up with the rest of customer marketing is that you take those stories from those customers and then you tell them back to the customers who are maybe new. And so you can help expand, you can help, sell new products, you can help people understand new ways of using your product. And so to me, it kind of all ties together. So in a couple words, so that's kind of how we define it. And at Coupa, we've developed a charter as well, and we call it One Customer, One Voice, so that people sort of remember what you're trying to do here. It's like, when you're trying to consolidate or when you're trying to make sure people go through customer marketing for a reference or anything like that, it's like, how can we keep this at top of mind? So it's like one customer, one voice. We want to come as one voice to the customer, and we want their voice to be as big as possible. So that's kind of how I think about it. And I know it's not a simple way to say it, but that's how we define it.
I think the 3 pillars approach, Charlotte, is a really good, smart way of thinking about how do you structure, how do you think about customer marketing. But Caitlin, I know you have a different definition, so we'd love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. So we're I feel like Charlotte tied it up nicely in a bow. I love that one customer, one voice. And I feel like that's a lot of the work that I'm doing as we sort of build customer marketing as a program at Phenom, is how do we bring all of those teams together that are interfacing with our customers, make sure that we have a clear, consistent message. Prior to me joining, or really as I was ramping up, one of the things I noticed was we had a lot of departments that were communicating with customers, but they weren't necessarily talking to each other. And so the advantage I have is that I'm talking to all of them and I'm able to see sort of that big picture. What are you sending and when and how are you saying it? And then let's take a step back and how do we want to communicate strategically? So a lot of what I'm doing, I also have 3 pillars, but they're a little bit different. Is supporting adoption and partnering with some of our other teams on how do we get that adoption best practice content out to our customers. Renewals, so supporting our sales team and customer success, they have sort of a shared renewal goal. And then finally upsell, so similar to your, I think it was your 3rd pillar, Charlotte, the how do we help them grow, how do we help them expand, and communicate that value back to our customers. And then we do also have a customer stories program, but it's actually managed out of our content marketing team. And so I'm sort of I guess the assistant is the best way to say it. I'm bridging that gap between our client success and our account management team and helping surface some of those stories and then passing it off. We have someone on our content team who had been doing it for a couple of years prior to me joining, and she's just really great at building those relationships. So I'm working to help foster that as well.
Excellent answer, Caitlin. And like I said, you ask, a couple of different people, you're going to get a couple of different answers. So, I think my program probably aligns pretty closely with Charlotte's in terms of having those 3 pillars, thinking, a lot every day about how do we capture more stories? How do we leverage those stories to attract prospective buyers? How do we continue to feed the PR machine and make sure that AR has, customers that they can tap into. We're always looking for new stories to promote. And really, for me, it's about shining a light on our customers, right? Making them the heroes and helping to build their brand, both personally and professionally, hopefully. And so, yeah, I mean, and what I feel like is it's kind of the role has expanded outside of just supporting sales and marketing. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into next is, how does customer marketing fit into the wider organization? So if you think about not just the folks that you might interact with on a day-to-day basis, but across the organization, across the business, who are some of your internal customers and how do you work with them? And what are some of the things you do to support them and their success? So I think this is another one where we wanted to tap into Charlotte, but before we get to Charlotte, Lauren, would you like to help us understand your opinion on this?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, so at Doctor, we were a lean team startup. So product and customer marketing was one department. And we worked really closely with the digital marketing team, with sales, client success, product, engineering. Sometimes we were more product managers, sometimes we were product marketing, and then the next day we were customer marketing. So it was worked with a lot of different teams, which was part of what is so great. And kind of similar to what Caitlin was talking about earlier about kind of being that linchpin of collaboration between all those. And really, I also love what you said, Charlotte, one customer, one voice, because that's so true. And keeping everybody on message, keeping everybody with the same voice. So, I think in terms of the actual customer marketing, we worked most closely with client success, obviously, and sales. And I think that the kind of combination of customer and product marketing was so helpful because it's so easy to get disconnected when you're not on the phone with the clients every day, when you're not, you don't have your boots on the ground. So getting to stay in touch with those directors of client success and even with the client success managers, and even sometimes call listening when you have time, is so helpful. So we work really closely with them to kind of just stay in touch and make sure that we are representing the customer and communicating with the customer properly. And then I'm trying to remember the other part of this question.
Yeah, how do you fit into the wider org? What are some of the other, parts of the company that you might support, and how do you do that?
Yes. So in terms of, I think for the most part, I covered how do we fit into the wider org, but in terms of who else do we support? I think it's also keeping sales and CS, a lot of keeping them on the same message, and keeping that consistent, because sometimes those teams can get a little disparate, and just making sure that the story of the company, of the product, and the story of who our customers are kind of stays consistent between those teams. And that's pretty much how it operated within Doctor. So
great. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more about the tight relationship between customer marketing and product marketing. I mean, it's so clear and apparent that product marketing folks want to use customer stories and examples and stats and that sort of thing, quotes, all sorts of kind of customer assets in the material that they're producing. And so having a strong relationship between the two teams, it just makes perfect sense. But maybe Charlotte, do you have a couple other examples that you can share with us?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. So at Coupa, customer marketing rolls up to the VP of product marketing, but customer marketing and product marketing aren't on the same team really. But we of course have that very strong alignment. To your point, that especially when we're developing stories, we always have a product marketer who's a part of that process. So once we've identified a story, we choose the product marketer who's the right product subject matter expert who can join us and actually help craft that story. I think that poses sort of one of the challenges with being customer marketing, is that you're kind of expected to be an expert in every area in a way. It's like, well, we're writing all the stories, and so, but can we really have that deep of knowledge on like 18 products, for example, if we have that many, right? And so it's like, how do you best leverage the relationships within the company and help them help you? And so product marketing is a huge partner, I think, for all of the companies that I've been at. It's funny too, it just depends on the company. So when I was at Box, I was attached at the hip with our comms person. So we would meet on a daily basis, and really there was so much demand for press with customers that was my strongest relationship. And of course, I always joke that like, sales are your takers and customer success are your partners. So it's like you're partnering with customer success on the regular as well. And then sales kind of like just takes what you create. And it's like, sorry for any sales people out there. I was one, so I can make that joke. But that's what it kind of feels like, where you're like, okay, what else can we give to sales? You need to package it up really easily, make it interesting for them, and get through the noise, because there's always a lot coming at sales. So yeah, for us, it's kind of partnering with customer success, partnering with other parts of marketing. Product marketing is probably the strongest, at least for us right now, or comms. And then, what we can package up and provide to sales to make it, easy for them. And so we've done some pretty cool stuff, or I've done some pretty cool stuff over the number of years, just with contests and different ways to engage with sales. And especially coming from that world, it's like, you kind of need to know what makes them like pay attention. Of course, money, contests, but then just, I think we don't give enough credit to making information easily accessible. So like putting it into one spreadsheet, or something that they can print out and put on their desk, or making story flashcards, for them to memorize the stories, things like that. Just little touches actually help with that. So those are some of the, partnerships that I've experienced over the past number of years.
Perfect. Yeah. So we've talked about product marketing. Sales is definitely an internal customer. PR, and like I mentioned earlier, analyst relations. I have one other example I was going to share, which is, we're always thinking about customer success and customer satisfaction and that sort of thing. And how do we measure those things? And what are the signals that customers are sending us to indicate whether or not they're having a good experience? And one thing that I pay really close attention to is the online reviews. And so when a review comes in, if it's less than stellar, I will find out who the customer success manager or rep is. And then also, bring in somebody from our support team so that they can address that customer's challenges, whether it be training or just an issue with the product. And then hopefully that can kind of change the customer's experience, and we can turn them into one of our advocates. So, but I think we've touched on a lot of different areas across the organization. So why don't we transition now into, how do we measure ourselves, right? We're always thinking about what is the return on the investment, right? The company is investing in us, and maybe we're investing in some of our partners and some of our tools that we're using. So if you think about, maybe on a quarterly or an annual basis, what are some of the maybe OKRs or success metrics that you're tracking and that you're reporting back to your management or to the business as a whole? Matt, I know this is something that you feel passionately about. So why don't you share your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, definitely. And just to echo my fellow panelists, those OKRs and metrics are different depending on the relationship that you build. So your OKRs for CS or customer success might be different than your product marketing manager or support as well. So I'll continue the theme of 3, and I measure success on an annual and quarterly basis through 3 distinct categories. So first, from a customer perspective, second, through the marketing lens, and then third, through sales. First, from the customer's perspective, Andrew, I know you just touched upon this, but I'm measuring success through Net Promoter Score, or NPS, on product usage. So some of my product marketers look at more review sites. I'm looking at more of the implementation and likeliness to recommend a product to a colleague once we've actually sold the product. So I have quarterly NPS targets to exceed each quarter. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we're all selling to actual individuals, although the buyer of the product, like a CIO or CTO, might hold the wallet of a division. That's often different than the actual end user. So it's critical to exceed customer satisfaction numbers each quarter. And then a little about the marketing perspective, I have a specific target around the number of customer references to hit. So I know there's always an appetite, as we've discussed, from analyst relations, from PR, from sales, obviously, to get more references and more references. So I have a customer reference target to hit, a number around event frequency as well as acts of advocacy. And those acts can be in forms of a client speaking externally at an event, for example. So it's so critical to get that one voice out there and showcase our customers in the light that they should be shown, and the delight that they're experiencing from a variety of different products. And then now these OKRs are all critical to helping sales teams win more business and delight customers through NPS and produce more customer references. So it's definitely like full life cycle in terms of how these metrics work together. And I have OKRs from the sales perspective in terms of total pipeline. Marketing has assisted in progressing. So deals that have expedited the decision date, or increase in value, or increase in sales stage. Also OKRs around closing and then building business for the company as well. So that's a little bit about defining OKRs. They may be different within your organization depending on where customer marketing fits into the larger organization, but it's really, to go back to the relationship standpoint, really key to bring everyone together, have a seat at the table to define how we're going to define success depending on the relationship as well.
It's an amazing answer, Matthew. I think you clearly and concisely articulated, how do we measure ourselves? What are we thinking about? What do we bring to the table? Who do we need? All that sort of stuff. And in order to be able to produce all those wonderful outcomes that you just described, there's this thing about recruiting folks into your program and getting them activated as advocates, and having them engage in these active advocacy, which you very eloquently described. So just curious for the panel, what are some of the avenues? What are some of the approaches, I guess, that you take to maybe identifying folks that you want to bring into your advocacy program? How do you do the outreach? Do you have maybe the customer success rep or, broker an intro for you? Anybody want to chime in and share their experience or thoughts about recruiting and kind of onboarding folks into your advocacy, program? All right. Well, I can tell you, for myself, I read the reviews. We get reviews just about every day. So I'm looking at those, and if those folks aren't already in our advocacy program, I'll do a little searching around in our CRM system and kind of find out some demographics about that customer. How long have they been with us? What products are they using? What has their NPS score historically been? Do we have a strong relationship already, maybe with the account rep? And sometimes I'll ask the account rep to broker that intro for me, send a warm email on my behalf, kind of describing who I am and what my role is. And I've found that I've had, a considerable amount of success with that. Sometimes I'll just pull lists and start, reaching out to folks, and it's almost like you cast a wide net, and then the folks who are interested, they respond and they say, yeah, I'd love to be a part of your program. Let's get on a phone call and you can share more details with me. And as I mentioned earlier, I always position this as I'm looking for opportunities to promote you as a thought leader or an industry expert within your space. And so I kind of appeal to people's let's call it ego, right? I want to help them gain more visibility. And I've found that seems to help a lot. The other place that I've had a lot of success with bringing folks into my advocacy or reference program is through the big annual, customer conference, when you get thousands of folks together and you can just meet, literally hundreds of people over the course of a couple of days and sort of pitch your program and hey, by the way, if you fill out a review, you'll get the $25 gift card or whatever it might be. Hey, we've got a booth over here where we're doing some interviews with folks on camera. Would you like to, join us for that? And so, so that's been a big success for me. And then, meetups and, we've been doing a lot of virtual meetups this year. So I have the reg list for that, and I can attach my my invitation to something that they're already participating in, right? So that's been a big success for me, is if there's something happening, big company event, and I have a group of customers that are coming, I can kind of tie the two together. And so we've been able to recruit, a couple thousand folks into our advocacy program at this point. And, so yeah, anybody else have any thoughts or feelings about, appropriate ways to try to attract folks to be a part of your advocacy program?
I have one thing that I think probably a lot of people listening will have the same sort of thought is, many of us are just one person or just have a very small team. And so it's like, how do we scale getting more advocates in our programs? Because it's really hard to one-off have conversations with everyone as much as we want to, and we want to connect with them and everything. But so I found things like creating a deck, just like a short deck, 1 or 2 slides that describes the opportunities available to them in a way that makes sense, and in a way that's like, what are the benefits to them? And then you can go around and do a roadshow and enable your sales team and your customer success team to speak to these points and bring them into their presentations they're already having with their customers. So on the success side, of course, it's the quarterly business reviews. They should be including that slide and having that conversation each time. And on the sales side, they can use it as a way to say, hey, once you're a customer, I'll introduce you to this team who gets you, all these cool opportunities. So it's a benefit of being a customer for us. So I think I'm always trying to think about scale and how I can have other people do that for me. And then it's like, it gives them an opportunity to build a relationship and do a good one, for their customer themselves. And then also we get to benefit from it because they're then passing us those customers. And, I think another cool thing to do too is to create a case study of your own customer. So if you've done a number of things with a customer, actually put that together as if it's its own case study. And then you can attach that to those slides. And they say, and by the way, look at this customer. What we did, we made a video because they wrote a book. So we promoted their book for them. We posted on our social channels to our community. And so it really puts all of that, it can be a little bit, what's the word? It's hard to describe these opportunities, especially when there's like a bunch where you're like, oh, you could be a reference, you could talk to press, you could do a story. They're like, whoa, these are a lot of things. But when you show like how we're actually supporting a customer through their journey and their personal kind of interests, then they're like, oh, I see what you did with them. Okay, that's really cool. So those are just a couple things that I think are really helpful.
Charlotte, it's really important for us to celebrate our wins and our successes. And, I love the idea of putting together maybe a customer advocate life cycle story, right? Where you're kind of documenting their journey from closed won to taking a sales reference to, doing a case study, doing a video, being a part of the advocacy program and documenting that. Because it's one thing for us to try to describe it in words, but if you actually have it on paper, and you can put that in front of your prospective advocates, I think it really drives home exactly what this program is all about. And then the other thing that you brought up, I think maybe Matt, you mentioned this too, is it's almost like a menu, right? Like it's all these different options and ways that you can be involved, whatever fits for you, whatever you're most comfortable with. Some companies have corporate guidelines where they kind of can't do certain things. And so, it's almost like, here's a list of 7 things. You tell me what you're comfortable with, and, we'll try to find you, opportunities to engage. And so, I think that one pager also should be a quick description of what your program's all about. Maybe there's you're using some tools that the more the customer is involved with your advocacy program, the more recognition they get, the more maybe points they earn, that sort of thing. So if you can put all that down on paper, and it does take, like you said, Charlotte, it takes a little bit of extra effort to kind of pull all that together and get it into your your corporate template and make sure the logos and all that stuff are right. But it really helps as you're sending out your invitations if you can attach that one-pager document that sort of describes your program. Great. Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. We still have a little bit of time left, but for companies that maybe don't have an advocacy or reference program up and running, they've done some reading, they've done some research, they understand the power and the importance of the voice of the customer, and they're thinking about launching a customer marketing program. What are some of the things they should be thinking about? What are some of the tools they should be considering? What are some of the best practices? Who are some of the people they should be speaking to besides the people on this panel, of course? So I hate to keep going back to you, Charlotte, but why don't you fill us in a little bit on, what are some of the things that companies should be thinking about as they're considering launching a customer advocacy, customer marketing program?
I can definitely start us off, but I know, because we all talked before this, that everyone has some good ideas. And part of the reason why this question even came up was like, oh, well, we know people are in the audience and people are in this position where it's like, I was just given this, or I'm now stepping into this role. And so really, what do I do with it? And I think the thing we talked about before was the biggest shift that I think needs to happen is going from being a services org to a strategic org, right? So instead of just helping people get customers for all of the things that they're doing, you start creating your own strategic programs. And so, again, it comes down to kind of the company and where you are and what the goals are as soon as you step into the role. But I can share with you a couple examples of my past in terms of, what I started. And whenever I step in, people always want, okay, what's the 30, 60, 90? What are you going to do? And I kind of turn it around. I'm like, well, what's the situation here? Because we have customer marketing has like all these tools in their toolbox. We have all these types of programs we can launch. And really, it's like, which ones come first? And I do believe there are a couple of things that you should do first to set yourself up for success in the future. So one of those is you should set sort of an advocacy brand and tone for your program, because everything you do after, you're going to want to attach that brand to. So at Box, in my experience, we called, our advocates the Box Stars. At Outreach, they were the heroes. And at Coupa, they're the spend setters. And so once people start hearing those words, then they include it in their own words and they're like, oh, I want a customer to be a spend setter, you know? And so that helps you just across the board, because then there's like this brand and personality that people want their customers to be a part of. So definitely start by developing that. And it's really fun and people will love it when you do. So it's kind of like a win-win-win. I think the second one is a little more less creative, but definitely important, which is setting up some sort of reference tracking system. A lot of us, we all know in our heads, like a lot of us start off with kind of a Google spreadsheet, and just like within a month, you're like, I don't know, all these customers have done everything. I don't, you know, it's really hard to keep track of. And so just having some sort of centralized technology that can help you track the activities is gonna just help you, because you can't even scale. Like you can't do a big program to get more customers if you don't know how to track them, right? It's like, it would be utter chaos. So those are kind of like two things that I think are extremely important to do in the beginning. But if you want those big wins, you know, you're going to have to start launching some strategic programs. And so I'm happy to talk about some of those that I did, but I'd love to hear kind of what everyone else has to say too.
Yeah, quickly, I'll just say, Charlotte, to your point and what you said earlier, kind of measuring those intangibles that aren't necessarily a deal size or win in revenue, but more, you know, we're promoting our customer stories really well. And just another point, I'd say you're kind of like the gatekeeper of your customers as well. I think it's also important to set boundaries with your organization, to not always go back to the same watering hole or same customer to tell that story, because you don't want to atrophy your client in terms of them speaking at the same event or same ask. And it's also really important to align on who's, you know, making the client ask and who owns that relationship, because I think even internally you might get tired of hearing from the same partner or client for a certain topic. So I think that goes back to our earlier point with, you know, aligning incentives across the organization to feed, you know, additional customer success stories or references, so that you're not hearing from the same person. So I just wanted to reiterate that and kind of also emphasize the point that, you know, you can be protective over the same customers that you're promoting.
I think that's so important.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I just gave you the like claps, because that's something that I really believe for customer marketers. Like there are children in a way. It's like you say no even to the CEO if we use the customer too much. Like, sorry, but fire me. But my job is to protect them. So I'm all about that, Matt.
Yeah, I think on the sort of the flip side too, so we don't feel like we're using the same customer over and over, it's like helping internally people understand who could be a reference. And going back to that menu, like it's great for customers to see these are your options to participate, but I also feel like it's equally as important for your internal stakeholders, and educating your customer success managers or even your account managers that, you know, every customer reference doesn't have to be a case study. So a customer who's maybe not in a place to do a case study could participate on a webinar or could speak at a conference, and just helping those internal people understand the different options, I think broadens your pool too.
These are all great points. You know, reference burnout is real, right? Going back to Matt, you know, that's a great point. I mean, you got to put kind of bumpers on your program, and, you know, there's some tools out there that are purpose built for that sort of thing. So, you know, and then the other thing, Charlotte, you brought up is, and I think Matt, you might have mentioned this, is kind of being the gatekeeper. You know, you might have support reaching out to a customer, you might have customer success reaching out, you might have me reaching out, and before you know it, you've got 7 or 5 different disparate messages going into the same customer. And I mean, I can attest that when I get 5 emails in the same day from the same company, I go, wait a minute, you know, you guys need to come up with a communication strategy here, because I'm getting asked or, you know, pinged from a lot of different folks. So, yeah, so, you know, maybe call it the gatekeeper, maybe call it the, you know, communications guru, I don't know what, but, you know, having somebody who's at least thinking about how often we're reaching out to a customer, and, you know, making sure that we give them enough time between asks so that they don't feel like they work for us. You know, I know my customers, they're busy doing their own job, right? They're heads down focused, and they want to be successful in their role. And if they're constantly taking time out of their day, to help me out, then I'm not helping them, right? So, all right, fantastic. Well, I think we covered a lot of really good ground on that one. Let's see. So, okay, let's talk about tools and kind of processes and procedures and workflows and that sort of thing. Why don't we start off, because I think, with customer marketing, customer advocacy, there's kind of a personality type. There's kind of some characteristics and some traits that one should probably possess if they're going to be really successful in all the things we've been talking about recruiting and building those relationships and kind of, building that trust and all that sort of thing. So, I don't know that anybody signed up for this question, but, what are some of the things that you are looking for? Maybe if you were going to be hiring for, somebody to fill in the customer marketing role, what are some of the personality traits that you should be looking for?
I'm going to chime in here just because I think for me, I'm proof that a career in customer marketing can come from literally anywhere. I came from musical theater and acting, and then went into the customer success world, and then into the customer and product marketing. And I think that, there's a lot of different character traits that I'm sure everybody will touch on, but I think having that kind of empathy and ability to kind of step into the mind of somebody else is so helpful in, really internalizing personas and knowing how to speak to your customers and knowing how to develop those relationships. It's been extremely helpful for me to have those skills in my back pocket. And so, I think those are a few really, really important ones to have, especially empathy, being able to, get on a customer's level and understand where they're coming from, and so that they do feel like you are their advocate. So yeah, it's been very interesting, but I honestly think customer marketer can come from almost anywhere.
Great. Yeah, Lauren, that's a really great point. Empathy, understanding, being able to put yourself in the shoes of the folks that you're working with. I've had an opportunity to get really close with some customers, and they've shared some really personal things that are going on in their lives. So, that takes a lot of time to kind of build that relationship. And you have to be willing to kind of be vulnerable and open up and be, share things about yourself too, right? I mean, the way I like to think about this is I'm not trying to have a vendor customer relationship. I'm trying to build kind of a friendship. You know what I mean? Something that's a little bit more human than just, you're a customer of the company I work for. Like, that's not very exciting. That's not fun. So if you can break down some of those layers between, the software or whatever the technology or the product that you represent, and you can kind of present a human element, bring some humanity into it, right? So that's really important. How about tools? Are there some things that we use that sort of help with our day-to-day job or help us be successful? I know, Charlotte, you talked about, Google Sheets and having some way to kind of track your efforts and the things that you're working on with your customers. Any other tools, any other technology out there that we want to talk about?
I'm happy to touch on a couple. I think one is going back to an earlier question around the types of programs you start. So when I first started at Outreach, my CEO said, "Hey, we have raving fans. All we need to do is engage with them." And so I took that as a online community, because you can really scale. And I know, Andrew, you definitely have done this a lot, and all of you are nodding your heads. And so, like I said, it comes into like what's needed at the moment. And so with the online community, I used a tool called Influitive, which was a very, very, very useful tool to engage with people at scale. And so I personally really like the tool. But what's interesting is that it's not always a perfect fit every time, wherever you are in the company. It very much depends on the persona that you're dealing with, kind of like the quote unquote level or title that you're dealing with. So and also the resources on the inside, I think it's very important that you at least have someone who can dedicate most of their time to moderating and making sure that they're really engaged. So there's a lot of caveats, but when used correctly, I found Influitive to be an extremely useful mechanism just to engage with people at scale in a fun way. So that's one.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I've used Influitive now at 2 companies. And you're right. If it's the right fit, it can really, really propel your program, really help you take it to the next level, help you build that brand you were talking about, Charlotte, help you, engage with your customers and have them, activate and acts of advocacy like you talked about, Matt. Kind of the sky's the limit for that tool too. It's almost like whatever you can dream, you can do, so I'm a big fan of Influitive. There's a few others, right? The online review sites, obviously I kind of touched on, and, that's a great place to kind of get a pulse of your customers' experience and maybe identify folks that you want to bring into your program. It's also another place to kind of source content from, right? Without actually having to go out and interview the customer. They're writing these things online, and all you got to do is kind of pull it together and make some ebooks or leverage those quotes in a creative way. In terms of interviewing, all of us interview, I don't know how many customers every quarter, right? Well, it used to be that I would record with my phone and then I'd frantically try to transcribe after the call, and that's not a good use of my time. So I record all the calls, and I use a service called rev.com to do the transcriptions for me. And then the nice thing about that is that I can build out this library of interviews that I can tap into. And to your point, Charlotte, around building out that customer advocacy lifecycle story, if we interview a customer 6 months post go live, and then 12 months post go live, and then 18 months post go live, the story's going to change, right? Their experience using your technology or the company that you work for it's going to change over time. And so those have been a couple of really cool, easy, fun ways for me to kind of keep my program running on all cylinders. Anybody else have any tools they want to mention, do a quick plug for?
We are actually in the process of launching a Salesforce user community. And so we right now use it for support tickets, for our knowledge management hub. And so the community is sort of that next step. And we're sort of hoping it becomes the one-stop shop for our customers to access sort of all of the things they need from us, but also can become a place where customers get to interact with each other, where we'll have, our product team in there, our support team closely monitoring all of that. We also use it sort of on the back end to track all of our interactions with customers. So every email we send goes into Salesforce on their contact record. Any email that's coming from their customer success manager, or notes from meetings that they've had, the same with their account manager. So it becomes sort of the central place for us to also see all of those things that are happening with a customer we're working with.
I have another sneaky one. I have a sneaky tool. So coming from a company like Outreach, it's a sales engagement tool. So it's like automating communications. And these days, a lot of companies are starting to have this tool. And typically it's used for like an SDR, ADR function, like a pre-sales. But you can actually use it in customer marketing. So back to that point earlier about how do we scale getting advocates, you could create a sequence or a cadence so that you can actually reach out to these new customers at a specific time with, the ask to join your program. So you can do that at scale. So that's one kind of sneaky thing that we've done before, which is really useful.
I love that idea, Charlotte. And we did a whole rollout and training of Outreach. Unfortunately, they ran out of licenses, so I wasn't able to get one. I know it would have really automated a lot of my outreach, literally, and communications. So maybe someday I'll be fortunate enough to get a license for Outreach.
Yeah. And sorry, I have one other thing too, which actually has really helped me in my career as a customer marketer that I also try and support my teams with, which is using budget to hire consultants. right? So it's all about scaling yourself again. And so, and a lot of, there's, especially these days, there's so many amazing customer marketing consultants out there. So if you can hire them to help you run a program, you can kind of oversee it, but they can do the groundwork for you so that you can continue to move quickly and start new programs quickly. So that's, and it's also easier to get budget for that instead of headcount sometimes. So I don't know, I think that's like a career hack that I've been able to do for myself somehow. And so I think it's been really, really useful. So I highly encourage people to think about that. What programs are you about to launch that you could just bring in a consultant for who can help you get it off the ground? And then it helps you move faster. It helps you have like a scalable program, especially if it's your first time creating these types of programs. Like say it's an awards program or a customer advisory board or even your advocacy program. Like there's plenty of really great consultants out there who can help with that. So I think that's just another great tip to elevate the career.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've got a writer who I've been working with for 12 years now. I brought him with me to maybe 3 different companies. I've actually got 2 writers on my staff right now. There's no way that I would be able to create, the 15 customer stories plus blog posts, plus blog posts, plus press releases, plus, all the things, right? Unless I had not a bench, but a few folks that have sort of brought with me along my career, and I have them to thank for a lot of the success that I've had. So definitely tools, people, working with folks across your company, right? Tapping into the relationships that your product marketers or your customer success folks have built. These are all really good ideas and great suggestions. So, as we kind of think about wrapping up the session, this has been a tough year, a challenging year for all of us, right? We used to go to conferences and we used to meet people face to face, and now everything's kind of virtual and, done through email and over the phone. And boy, Zoom fatigue is real. If you think back on this last 12 or 13 months, what are some of the challenges that you encountered, and maybe what are some of the creative ways that you overcame some of those challenges? And just real quick, so for me, we used to go to our conference and we'd film our customers. This year, what we did was we put together these camera kits. And so the camera kit has a 4K camera. It's got a light and a microphone, and we send them to customers and they film themselves. They get to keep the camera kit. They send us back the SD, the data card, and then we go off and create a customer video out of that. Any other interesting ways that you've kind of overcome some of the challenges that you faced over the last year?
Yeah, so I think we'll hear, a couple event examples, but when COVID hit back in March of 2020, this was like days before a big in-person event that we were having in New York City. And I think being able to pivot and develop what a really quality virtual experience, whether that be an event or a webinar or just a meetup, what that looks like, I think is really key. And I think the ability to understand as we all feel the Zoom fatigue, when and where do we want to develop a new experience, and how do we learn from each one? So are we developing webinars just for the sake of webinars, or is there something new and exciting going on? And then I think that experiential element of events is huge also. Depending on the company, there's always legal ramifications and red tape, but how do you send something of tangible value to your customers that they can experience as well? So we've had the ability to do some wine tastings and some really nice, community gatherings where we can tie in some of the technical elements of products we're trying to push out the door, but how do we come together as a community and build more of that virtually, I think has been a great learning for 2020 into 2021 as well.
I think the other thing too, kind of around the virtual events thing, is especially as the pandemic first hit, a lot of our customers were asking like, well, what are other companies doing? And so we've been working really hard to sort of create those spaces where we're the facilitators, but they're the main show in terms of the conversation. And so we'll typically host, we have sort of 2 flavors of this. One is the executive roundtable, where it really is just a conversation. And then the other is, we call them virtual power lunches. And so they're at lunch, we share sort of, here are some of the findings that we've seen around a specific topic. And then we always save the last 15 minutes for conversation. But it's, I think, sort of we are the connectors. And so it's how do you create that space for other people to talk to each other, especially when there's so much uncertainty, and really adding that as a value add of being a customer of ours that doesn't necessarily benefit us. It's more about them.
Fantastic. And Matt, if there's any leftover wine bottles, I'll send you my address, and
yeah,
we can do our own.
I'm asking for myself too.
Sounds good. All right. Well, listen, we covered a lot of ground. You know, I think there's a lot to know, and there's a lot to kind of get comfortable with and understand if, you know, somebody's considering making a move into the customer marketing space, or for companies that are considering adding this to their marketing organization. You know, any final thoughts or things you want to share, things we didn't cover, you know, last minute things you want to discuss?
I think we talked a little about, you know, from a organizational standpoint of what we want to accomplish with customer marketing. But I think if your company is starting to invest in customer marketing, really be core to what you're trying to achieve, whether that be get more voices out from a customer perspective, or develop more client references. And I think from an individual standpoint, I think another key skill is, you know, use case identification and how that works cross-functionally. So if you're hearing from a customer and how they applied a product to a business problem at their organization, how do you take that and scale it, as Charlotte mentioned a bunch, you know, to sales, to engineering, to product. So I think that's another great skill to have, is how you translate that, but know the many different players that are within your organization that would benefit from hearing that use case, or, you know, hearing and expanding upon that use case as you tap into other industries as well. And I think as you're looking from the industry perspective, hearing from a customer from a highly regulated industry like a public sector or financial services is also huge in terms of aligning incentives for your sales team of, you know, showcasing this story is going to help you win more business in those specific sectors. So I think from an organizational standpoint, from an individual standpoint, just aligning goals and that use case identification skill is huge.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. Anything you want to add to that, Charlotte?
Changing gears a little bit, but similar in terms of cross-functional alignment, and going back to a discussion we had about getting more advocates in your program is, if you've heard me speak before, I've mentioned this before because it's one of my favorite programs, but I call it the Storytime Happy Hour program. So especially for groups in your organization who are close to the customer. So we have a couple of those at Coupa. One is sort of like a sales engineering organization, and then there's of course customer success. And so usually you realize like they hold all this customer information in their heads, and so how do you get it out of there without meeting with every single person, you know, for an hour talking about their customers? And so what we've done before in the past is develop, you know, a Google spreadsheet that's basically a case study template, and we have each person fill out one or two. And what I've done when we're in person is say, okay, I'm going to book, you know, 2 hours on your calendar. We're all going to get in a room. I'll bring in some beer and some cold hard cash. So for every story you write, you literally get $50. And of course there's different ways to do this, but man, you get so many stories. And it's great because then it's like, boom, all of a sudden. So whether you're needing to recruit like specific stories that are priority areas for you, or you just need to fill up your bank, that's great. And then of course you need to put it in a centralized place so that you can search easily and then find, you know, exactly what you're looking for. But it's a great way to get new customer stories and like kind of nominations for advocates as well.
Love it. Love it. Love it. You know, kind of final thoughts from me is, you know, and Charlotte, I think you probably can recognize this as well, but, you know, back in 2006, 7, 8, this role didn't even exist, right? It was just called References way back when. And you had two customers. They were sales and marketing. Those were your internal customers. So it's been amazing to watch this role evolve and develop. And, you know, way back in, you know, in 08, 07, there was a couple of dozen people that were really focused on this thing. And now, you know, when I look at LinkedIn and I see how many people are, you know, in the customer marketing world, customer advocacy world, the momentum is building. And it's not a nice to have anymore. This is really a must have for any business that wants to harness, to leverage, to include the voice of the customer. So I'm excited for the future. I can't wait to see what are some of the innovative approaches that new folks into this role are going to bring, new life that they're going to you know, breathe into some of the old ways that we've been doing things, you know, over and over again. So I think the future is really bright for customer marketing, and I think, you know, there's a lot of goodness to come. So and with that, I think we've filled our time slots. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating in today's panel. Really exciting stuff. Thank you so much. You're so, you know, everybody brought a really interesting, unique perspective, and I think we all shared some really good knowledge. So thank you all so much.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Thanks.
Thank you.
And if anyone wants to reach out, I'm sure we all feel the same way, but you know, feel free to reach out. Love, to your point, Andrew, love talking about customer marketing. I cannot wait to learn from people who are just starting and who are going, why were you doing it that way for so long? And teach me something that I don't know. So would love to connect with everyone.
Yeah, I think we're all on LinkedIn, right? You know, people can track us down and get a hold of us and pick our brains a little more if they want to.